deck that each of these players are known for, they have not strayed away from them. Brad Nelson, you know, a lot of people don't really like Junk Aristocrats moving forward. Some people like the White-Black Hemo's approach or other Cartel Aristocrats decks, or no Cartel Aristocrat decks at all. But if anyone's going to play it, it is going to be the former Player of the Year. He's on your left, Braun Duin, always playing Junk Reanimator on your right, and he's going to start off with an Addison's Pilgrim.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, both these players are coming off 2 buys. There was just a handful of players which had 2 buys for this event.
Brian off of 2 buys, Brad had to play last round, and he
Okay.
actually defeated a mono red deck last round. So he does not have the luxury of having 2 buys, but Braun Duin, being an Open Series ringer, actually making the trip up to Worcester a couple weeks ago to make sure he did have 2 buys, as he's going to resolve a Lingering Souls. Does have them, also does have 2 Spirit Tokens, and he's got a different build of Junk Aristocrats Junk Reanimator this go around. Lingering Souls is a card that's gone back and forth in this deck. You see that actually does have it this weekend. The big question, of course, is does he have Crater Hoof Behemoth to go along with those? And it does not look like he does.
No, he's playing 1 Shadowborn Demon instead, actually,
Okay.
in that spot. Which is really interesting. I kind of like it as a Reanimator target. It has a great, obviously, enters the battlefield ability where it just can kill any creature.
The thing with Braun Duin's deck is he's going to resolve a Grizzly Salvage here. You see a Forest, a Gavany Township, a Thragtusk, another Salvage, and an Overgrown Tomb. Is that, you know, it's always changing to keep up with the metagame. As we saw last weekend in Richmond, this was a deck that did not do very well at all last weekend. No top 8 bursts, not a lot of talk about it. Scavenging Ooze, greater than sign Junk Reanimator. Is that actually the case?
Yeah, I mean, he's certainly, what is it? I watched some Insect Session play a card with flashback and a card that dumps things into the graveyard.
Yes.
It's like, boy, well, it's a good thing that guy doesn't have a Scavenging Ooze in play. But he seems really not deterred at all.
I mean, if he thinks he can overcome it, then the deck is still quite good, as you see an Elvish Mystic now to go along with that Addison's Pilgrim, so not Arbor Elf anymore, maybe a Mystic. He only does have 1 to go along with 3 Arbor Elves and 3 Addison's Pilgrims, so 7 mana accelerants, but they are diversified, as he does not attack with those Spirit Tokens. The big question here is, can this deck overcome Scavenging Ooze?
Right. And I think it has some minor upgrades. Like you said, that Elvish Mystic is an upgrade. You know, I think Arbor Elf was usually a mana creature, but there was about that 10% of the time where you'd play, you know, you'd be like, oh, my hand's Sun Petal Grove, Isolated Chapel, Arbor Elf. And you're like, oh, I don't actually have a forest. So it's like there's these slight upgrades that I think the deck has gotten. It looks here like what Brian's doing, though, is he's thinking that this game, really, that he's the more control deck here. You said he didn't swing the Lingering Souls tokens. It looks like Brian just wants, like, he's planning to just trade them with the hope of winning the later game. You know, he even had a Gavany Township in hand and still opted not right now. So, you know, he like still opted to trade his Lingering Souls tokens.
You see an Unburial Rites there, hard cast from Braun Duin's hand. Gonna get back Thragtusk, gain some life, push himself up to 19. And you know, it is all about role assessment in this matchup. Are you the aggressor, are you the beatdown deck? And I think that Braun Duin playing Junk Reanimator is more akin to being the aggressive deck in this matchup. I think the big goal here is to actually resolve an Angel of Serenity, you know, either hard cast it or, you know, reanimate it, get that into play, because you see Nelson does have 3 tokens in play, and it takes care of that and, you know, everything else that Angel of Serenity does.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's a temptation on this board to become the aggressor when you have that Gavany Township, but Brian didn't even really think about it. He's very much, no, I'm the control player here.
And I think Nelson realizes that he is the aggressive player here, and it's not the control deck, because
that
you saw
Doomed Traveler plays very aggressive.
Yeah, you saw him sacrifice that Doomed Traveler, make a Spirit Token, give himself protection from Grain, make sure he can get through that Thragtusk, because again, he doesn't want to go to the late game where Braun Duin's cards are better than his, like an Angel of Serenity, maybe like a Shadowborn Demon loop, multiple Thragtusk. He does have 2 Orbs of that Ghost Council in his main deck as well this weekend, so Brad needs to get Brian dead as fast as he can, and that's why you see that aggressive sacrifice with that Cartel Aristocrat.
Right. Nonetheless, though, Brian's attacking with Thragtusk. Is attacking you as opposed to just leaving it back as a blocker. Why I'm interested by it is, it seems like, well, he's really enticing the play for Brad to just block it with a Traveler and a Voice of Resurgence.
Yeah. He really is. Also, I mean, this could be a kind of a freebie attack here. Smells of like a Restoration Angel. You see Nelson.
It's not actually an attack.
Yeah, not even actually an attack. Maybe trying to cheat in 5 points of damage. As you see Nelson taking his time figuring out how to block here, trying to sniff through what Braun Duin's cooking right now. What is, you know, what's his follow-up going to be? Is it Shadowborn Demon? Is it going to be just flashback Lingering Souls and have a Gavany Township activation? That's the big question.
So, yeah, so he's going to block with both of them. Brian looks like he's just going to let them trade.
All right, so, you know, this could be also a case where Matthias, where he just wants to trade, put his Beast Token into play. He's going to use Todd Anderson for this one, and then reanimate that Thragtusk with either a Hardcast Lingering Soul, or Hardcast Unburial Rites, or the one from his graveyard.
So he just wants it in the yard.
So we're going to go with Shadowborn Demon. a card that we'll bring up on the screen for you here, the 5/6 flyer, Mythic Rare. A lot of cards talked about in M14. Obviously, Scavenging Ooze is going to be at the center of it. We've also talked about, you know, the new Planeswalkers in Chandra and Garruk. This one, not a lot of press. A one-of here looks pretty good.
Well, yeah, so the Shadowborn Demon has, obviously, you're playing it because it has this great Enter the Battlefield ability. You know, it's a Necrotal. And its stats are amazing. It's a 5/6 flyer for 5. We'll see a lot of times it's going to come down and sacrifice itself, which, first of all, isn't very bad for the deck. The deck kind of, you know, then it can cast it again, which is great. And actually, it's one of the few decks that has the potential to have 6 creatures in its graveyard.
Yeah, I think of the decks in the format that can actually, you know, ignore that, quote, disadvantage, this is the one. And it is nice to actually have that unique effect where you know, we've seen a lot of acidic slimes that enter the battlefield abilities from these decks. You know, of course you can Restoration Agent with this thing, get the trigger yet again. And as we can see right now against this army of Lingering Souls tokens, it can play some defense in the air as well.
Yeah, what I think can't be overstated about the card is it's a 5/6 flyer. That's really big.
Yeah. It's absolutely huge, and you see Nelson play a couple more threats here, and he does play among them a Scourge-Stag High Priest, conveniently making 5/5 demons against a 5/6 Shadowborn demon.
Upkeep. Now Duin has to pick what he wants to sacrifice here.
Looks like a Resto Besto to me. With that trigger on the stack, he's going to take care of that Scourge-Stag High Priest, so no demons are going to be coming in. We'll probably see a sacrifice to the Cartel Aristocrat there, and then Braun Duin's going to sacrifice that Shadowborn demon. So as you mentioned, maybe a little reanimation.
Yeah, well, I mean, and it's just, if you remember, you know, even though he flickers out the Shadowborn demon, he still does have to sacrifice a creature there.
So it's going to be a flashback of Lingering Souls via the Avacyn's Pilgrim and an Isolated Chapel. 2 more Spirit tokens are going to come into play, and you see Braun Duin gumming everything up, as Junk Reanimator is aching to do, making it so that he can't die, and if he ever does draw that Angel of Serenity, it's going to be a complete blowout, but also, he is a card that can take over the game in itself in Gavony Township.
Right, so really Brian just has to stay alive and activate Township a lot of times. He's at 15, which seems like more than enough right now in the situation. It's a little scary how many spirits like how many Lingering Souls Brad has, but he doesn't have a way to pump them in. He doesn't have his own Township.
Yeah, he doesn't have a Township, and he doesn't have 5 mana either. And if you're Braun Duin, you're doing a really nice job of gumming everything up, making it difficult to be able to get through in the air or on the ground, and then your Township can actually start to take over. And as we mentioned multiple times during this game, Nelson has to be the aggressor here, and if he's playing things and just passing the turn back, if you're Braun Duin, you gotta be thrilled.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that even if Brad does draw his Gavony Township, 1, he only has 3 lands, so he needs Gavony Township and a land, and 2, it doesn't really matter. In a Gavony Township fight, all that matters is who starts doing it first, and I think we already know that's Braun Duin.
And now Braun Duin is feeling confident enough to send in that 3/3 Beast token, Todd Anderson coming into the red zone. And again, now he can start making kind of some unique attacks. Maybe get in a Beast attack here, and maybe a Restoration Angel attack there. If Braun Duin wants to, or if Nelson wants to take care of it, he's got to throw a lot of spirits in front of it to be able to do that, or he's just going to start chump blocking. We see a chump block here with the Doom Traveler. But Braun Duin's going to try to actually just start to nibble away at Nelson's army right now.
Yeah, well, Brad really can't afford to start making trades here. You know, 3 spirits for that 3/3 is terrible for Brad. He has to think, if he's going to win this game, Brad has to kind of picture how it's going to work. And certainly it's going to start with having an army of spirits. If he trades them away, then Brad really is just left with an inferior board.
You see Braun Duin is going to cast a couple spells here, an Arbor Elf, and he's going to cast a hard cast on Burial Rites from his hand. Going to get back Thratus as the option of getting back the Shadowborn Demon, but it doesn't really do very much here. Braun Duin wants to add 5 life, add a Thratus to his table, and I wouldn't be surprised to see next turn Matthias, maybe that Thragtusk and the Beast token get in there and keep nibbling away at Nelson's army.
Right, well, Brian can he can send as many or as few creatures as he wants to right now, once he feels safe in his life total. He actually has more creatures on the board than Brad Nelson does. So he can start to be aggressive here. I still think we may see him play it conservatively, because he just, you know, it seems like he's really aware of his role assessment and how he's been playing so far. He has had a lot of opportunities to get more aggressive and really hasn't taken any of them. But that said, I think, you know, that option is there for him if he suddenly starts to feel pressured to race.
And I think Nelson realizes that, you know, Braun Duin does have a lot of options at his disposal here, so he's going to start attacking. He's basically coming to the consensus of, I have to get after his life total right now. So the spirits do come in, some get through, Braun Duin trades some of his away. Nelson's going to flashback that Lingering Souls, 2 more spirits in, and a Doom Traveler as well, realizing that the longer I sit here and let Braun Duin do his thing, the worse off it gets for me.
I want to talk about the timing with with which Brad made that attack, because it's so important. Brad managed to trade off those spirit tokens before a Gavany Township activation happened.
Important.
That's really important. Now Braun Duin only has 1 flying blocker, so with Brad's attacks, we see he has 6 flyers right now. It means they can push 5, 4, 3. You know, he can push up to 15 damage through suicide attacks if he just like swung all his spirits every turn, which is conveniently Brian's life total.
Yeah, not so bad.
You know, obviously that's a lot of turns in the making, but if he's facing an army of a 3/4 flyer and 2 2/2 flyers, then Brad just has no way to push that damage through in the air.
So, you know, it's an attack that Nelson had to make, is what it looks like, is now we do see the Beast Token and the Thragtusk coming across. Nelson going to block one, block the other, sacrifice the Doom Traveler to the Cartel Aristocrat, give it protection from green, Doom Traveler trigger, put that Spirit into place, so no work done. Nope. But that's an attack that Braun Duin has to make to get that part of the game over with.
And this is why the Aristocrats is so cool. It's like, well, Brian did swing 2 creatures for 8, and what did he get out of it? Well, he got half a Doom's Traveler.
Yeah. So now here is a Garruk Relentless. That's going to come into play. Let's see what it's going to fight, or if it's going to pump out a Wolf token. You see the 3 on there. It looks like it's going to go down. Yeah. Attempt to go down to 2.
Right. I don't think Brian even thought about what he wanted it to do. I think Brian feels if he can take care of all these spirits, then the game is his. So, you know, it's not Wolves, it's not his own clock, it's his own life total he cares about. He is sticking to that control role in this matchup, immediately going for a spirit token.
So he's going to look to shoot that down, and what's important here is that if that does resolve, because Brad can sacrifice that spirit to a Cartel Aristocrat to make it so it doesn't resolve, if it does, Garruk goes down to 2, flips into the Veil Curse, and then this sacrifice ability to maybe go find an Angel's Serenity starts to come up, and then things get a little bit more hairy for Nelson. That's why you see the pause. That's why you see him considering sacrificing it so that the fight doesn't happen, but it is going to happen.
Right, so I mean, Brad's got to think about it 2 ways. If he leaves it alive, the Garruk's going to eat a spirit token every turn. If it's dead, now Brad might have to, like, Brad can't deal with Angel of Serenity either, so what I think he decided here was, he thought, okay, well, I'm gonna have to attack to kill this Garruk anyway. That's just how this game's gonna be. So I guess I'd rather have it be at 2 than 3. Then I can send more at Brian's face at the very least.
You see Braun Duin does reanimate his Shadowborn Demon. That takes care of his spirit, and just as we mentioned, you know, he could make those attacks good Nelson with spirits willing away at Braun Duin's life total over a couple of turns. Braun Duin realizes that, fights one, reanimates Shadowborn Demon, kills another one. Now it's ready to block, making attacks worse.
Right.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see in the following turn him sacrifice that Shadowborn Demon to the effect to reanimate it again, or convenient little play, you can sacrifice the Thragtusk. Get that back, get 5 more life. So Shadowborn Demon looking very impressive in Junk Reanimator.
The worry here is, so if Brad wanted to kill Garruk, if he doesn't kill Garruk, he's gonna have to beat an Angel of Serenity. That's bad news already.
Sure.
But if he does kill the Garruk, he's gonna have to swing at least. He's gonna have to swing the Cartel Aristocrat can do it by itself. If he wants to do it with just spirits, he's gonna have to swing 4 spirits. And Brian has actually a counterattack with that 5/6. Brian actually has a counterattack of about 13.
Jeez.
So, you know, obviously we haven't seen Brian become the aggressor yet, but that line's still there, and Brad has to be aware of it.
You see Nelson's going to play a Young Wolf. He's going to sacrifice it immediately to Cartel Aristocrat. We'll figure out what the protection color is going to be. Either white or black, because he does have a Tragic Slip in his hand that now does have Morbid. I think Nelson's trying to figure out which one of these threats do I want a Tragic Slip. Is it a Demon or is it the Restoration Angel? It is going to be the Demon, and now everything is going to come sideways, but where are they going to go, as the Cartel Aristocrat did name white?
I think it's the Cartel hit the Garruk, and everything else went to Brian's face. So 1 spirit died, and Brian's drops to 11. Brad's sticking to the game plan.
Yeah, I mean, he's just got to keep pushing through damage. You see Braun Duin untap with a pretty healthy board. Township among those lands. Curious to see what cards he does have in his hand. You take a look at his lands right now, and his colored sources, he does have the necessary white to be able to cast an Angel of Serenity, but he's going to start his turn with a Mulch. So, Mulch, Thragtusk, Temple Garden, and Restoration Angel are the cards revealed. Temple Garden going to go to the grip, along with an Absence Pilgrim that it's already there.
Yeah, and I think there's enough creatures in the yard off that Mulch that if Brian reanimates Shadowborn Demon, I don't think it's sacrificing something anymore.
Might be staying around
I think it's just a 5/6.
Oh darn, just a 5/6. Other thing to keep in mind now as well is that even though Braun Duin does Mulch there, he does have enough mana for a Gavany Township activation. We've saw over the last couple of turns that he's trying to push through some damage here so that Nelson can't start maybe top decking into Gavany Township and making his spirits relevant. We'll see if he's going to come across with the same attack he did last time. It looks like he is. Beast Token and Thragtusk.
Now, where I think about what Brian really wishes he could hit off that Mulch would have been a Lingering Souls. That's probably the best card he could hit on it. As we said right now, like, it's not how big his creatures are. because Junk Aristocrats is really good at chump blocking, you know, so like Doom Traveler, block, sack. It's not the size of Brian's creatures that matters. What really matters is how many of them fly, how many of them can block these spirits.
So we see a Evanston's Pilgrim. You're going to see Braun tap some mana here. It looks like we're going to have I thought we might have a Gavany Township activation, but it's going to be on Burial Rites yet again.
There's another on Burial Rites.
Resto Besto, going to blink that Thragtusk, another Beast Token coming in, 5 more life, going to put Braun up to 17, but most importantly, 2 flying blockers. 2
flying blockers. So it was an interesting choice between Restoration Angel and Shadowborn Demon, whether or not he wanted to whittle away another spirit or just get 5 life. Spirit or 5 life is pretty close, but he chose the 5 life, and that looks like that's enough for Brad.
Yeah, Nelson draws his card. He says he's seen enough. This is too difficult for me to get through, and he's going to concede the game. So Braun with Junk Reanimator is going to win game number 1 over Brad Nelson playing Junk Aristocrats. Junk Reanimator might not be dead yet, but it is only up a game as we take a look at the sideboards. We'll go over Nelson's first as he's going to be on the play. You see 2 Appetite for Brains, 2 copies of Duress, 1 Obsidian Ghost Council, 2 Slayer of the Wicked, 3 Abrupt Decay, 2 Scavenging Ooze, 1 War Priest of Thune, 1 Brave Revelation, and 1 Sin Collector. The obvious one is Scavenging Ooze.
Yeah, Scavenging Ooze, the card that really shut down Junk Reanimator in a lot of people's minds. Not in Brian's mind, but yeah, we'll see that out of Brad. We'll almost certainly see Appetite for Brains too. Exiling so important in this matchup. Other things, possibly not. Unfortunately for Slayer of the Wicked, the Shadowborn demons are not wicked enough to be slayed by him, so that actually doesn't apply in this matchup.
Oddly enough.
Right.
Obsidian is a card that we've seen Nelson board in a lot of interesting situations where you wouldn't expect him to board in because it is a super unique effect that changes the dynamic of the game, gaining 2 life, draining 2 life, making a blocking and attacking difficult. I wouldn't be surprised to see him board that in, often because he does play that card a lot and boards in very obscure situations. You know, other things to bring in, I don't really love Sin Collector in this matchup. Abrupt Decay is kind of mediocre here. Duress I feel the same way about. I think that the important one are the Scavenging Oozes and the Appetite for Brains. I'm with you there.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting because I bet I would have a hunch because these 2 players practice with each other so much that they know each other's board plan.
Yeah.
Might, for example, if you look at the key card in Brian's sideboard, it's Prophet Loss in this matchup. And you might even see something like Brad boarding in Duress because he's aware that Prophet Loss is nuts against him. You know, not something you would obviously do in the dark because Duress is not good against Junk Reanimator.
Yeah, traditionally not. You take a look at the Junk Reanimator spells. I mean, he's got 1 Putrefy, 2 Lingering Souls, 3 Garruk Relentless, on Burial Rites, Grizzly Salvage, and Mulch. Duress is not very good here, but as you said, it can get a little bit inbred where you might want to actually board in Duress because he knows that Brian does have Prophet Loss and additional Garruk Relentless in his sideboard as well. An interesting card that I find in his sideboard here, Matthias, a card I haven't seen for a very long time. I think it's an 013.
The Tree of Redemption.
Tree of Redemption.
So Tree of Redemption, I'm a huge fan of the card.
Okay.
I've played 4 of them in a deck at the Pro Tour, so...
I think you're too big of a fan of the card.
Too big of a fan.
Maybe not.
That was a situation... That's probably the dumbest thing where it involved a situation where you put increasing savagery on Tree of Redemption. And that was a board plan which aggro decks couldn't answer. No, but in this situation, Tree's really only good against red decks.
Okay.
Like, you'd think it'd be good against aggro decks in general. It's good against decks that are like trying to count up to your life total and don't play much removal and don't have much inevitability. The Tree's really good. There's so many ways that the Tree can get blown out that you usually... he's probably just playing it for things like Niblets. Because Niblets, you know, they're just attacking you, right? Yep. They don't have anything like a Putrefy. They don't have, like, cards. There's so many cards that can go over the top of the tree. For example, like in Brad's deck, I would say Skurstog High Priest. That's something that Tree of Redemption really can't deal with. And when you're playing something like that 013 for 4, you really want to lock out the game with it. So I think he can use it. But as we saw there, you know, another ground blocker really wouldn't have helped Brian that game.
No, not at all. You see Nelson very quickly looks at his opening hand, is going to send it back. Looks like Braun may be happy enough. As if you guys are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Matthias Hunt, the Star City Games Open Series featuring the Invitational has made it here to Somerset, New Jersey. If you guys do want to join in on the conversation, maybe you think Nelson or Braun may sideboard a different way, at SCG Live, hashtag SCGINVI for your tweets. We're in round 3 of 16, 8 today, 4 Standard and 4 Legacy, 8 tomorrow, 4 Standard and 4 Legacy, and then we'll do some elimination rounds on Sunday and a couple more opens as well this weekend.
Yeah, so that's a really interesting, actually, with how the format of this tournament works. For players like Braun Duin who enter this format with 2 buys, it's interesting because they only actually played 2 rounds of Standard today, 4 rounds of Legacy, but at the same time, remember, the top 8 of the tournament is Standard. So it's almost like you want to make sure it can really affect your deck selection.
It definitely
right.
can.
The thing is when you know you aren't playing the initial rounds of a tournament, what that usually means, or at least going back from the theory of people playing Grand Prix with 3 buys, is when I play Grand Prix with 3 buys, I would expect that I will be playing mostly against known quantities. That's the difference. You know, I don't care. Like, oftentimes I'll ask someone, if you have a deck, you know, what's your deck's matchup against random stuff, which is like pretty relevant. You know, for example, Jund is great against random stuff.
Yes.
But you know, Junk Aristocrats maybe could lose to random stuff.
Absolutely. It's more of a metagame deck where Jund is, you know, I call a deck like Jund the fun police, where, you know, if you've got this cool, sweet idea, Jund goes, yeah, I have Olivia Voldaren, I don't care about your cool, sweet idea because you're dead. Yeah. It's great at beating a random
Jund
deck.
has historically had, like, as archetypes go, has had one of the best random deck matchups.
Yes, absolutely. As you see Nelson happy with his 6, gonna play a Skirtek High Priest on turn 2, Braun Duin gonna just play an Arbor Elf, and if you've ever watched Brad Nelson play Junk Aristocrats before, you're used to seeing him on turn 3 play a 3rd land, play a Cartel Aristocrat, and a Doom Traveler, and pump out that 5/5 demon token. I can't even remember the number of times I saw that at Grand Prix Miami, but just an honest attack for 1. a little less impressive. Yeah, I would say so, and see if he has any sort of follow-up here.
Brad was on a mulligan to 6, so it might just be, you know, we know he has lands and spells. He looks like he has Tragic Slip and Blood Artist.
Alright, so it's not so bad. Once you stop the mana acceleration of Braun Duin, this is one of the ways that people actually try to fight against Junk Reanimators. You kill those mana accelerants, you make him play an honest game and not play ahead of you, and make him actually have to either mulch or Grizzly Salvage for lands, or just hit their land drops. That's the way to go about beating them.
So what I think happened there is that Brad was playing in a lot of fear of Garruk Relentless. Remember that he used his kill spell before he had a 3rd creature to make a 5/5 demon out of it. He was just really concerned with that mana creature. I think because if Brian had played Garruk Relentless that turn, it would just be like lights out for Brad.
You see that Cavernous Souls naming human allowed him to cast the Fiend Hunter for Braun Duin. Now he's going to play an Avacyn's Pilgrim and an Arbor Elf. And Fiend Hunter, not oftentimes feeling frisky, but it is right now. Going to come across for 1.
Yeah, there's not really anything to fear. You know, Blood Artist is an 0/1.
So Nelson going to draw a card. He has an Overgrown Tomb. That's a 5th land. And what that, it's a Gamity Township, but what that means right now is he does not have an Obsidian Ghost Council in his hand. He does have the necessary mana to cast it, so flooding badly. He does have an Overgrown Tomb in his hand and a Tragic Slip, so he's in some trouble now because Braun Duin is at 5 mana, and that's Thragtusk territory.
If we check in Brian's hand, he also does have the Garruk Relentless.
Okay, so Nelson certainly did play right around it for that turn on turn 3. Here comes Fiend Hunter yet again.
Brad could block it. He could block it and make his guy a 1/2.
He absolutely can, and it looks like that's what he's going to do. He's got nothing else going on, so there's your counter. Braun Duin knows that. You saw the hesitation with the attack during Nelson to do that.
Well, you can see on Nelson's face that he's really not happy about making this block either, because there's just so many cards that are so good against him right now.
Yeah, there certainly are.
You know, he's now let his opponent know that he really has nothing.
And it's got to be nice if you're Braun Duin to just have the free reign over this turn. There's Garruk Relentless, Baby G, as he calls it, going to take care of that Blood Artist. And the important thing here too, and this is a really crafty play by Braun Duin. He makes an attack with the Fiend Hunter. As you see, Nelson's going to extend the hand here, so Braun Duin's going to win this match 2-0, pretty easy fashion. But he makes an attack with the Fiend Hunter. Blood Artist blocks, puts a +1/+1 counter, okay? Now we play the Garruk Relentless. It fights, kills the Blood Artist, but now the Garruk is going to flip into a more important mode probably. So now Braun Duin can start tutoring things and actually start doing some things of relevance, where if he just plays the Garruk and fights Blood Artist, maybe Nelson goes, all right, that's fine. I don't want it to be Garruk the Veil Cursed.
Right.
But now he has
now it gets to
now
flip.
it
He
is
wanted
Garruk
the
the Veil
counter
Cursed.
on
Yeah, that's probably what ends up happening there. Nelson draws his card, concedes the game. So it is kind of minuscule at this point, as he was flooding, didn't have a lot of action. But it's crafty plays like that that qualified Braun Duin for Pro Tour Theros in Dublin and has won him so many matches with this deck.
Right, so he is qualified for Dublin.
Won a PTQ with Junk Reanimator when it was Slime time many months ago. Defeated Tommy Ashton in the finals, playing red-green aggro. You know, 2 stalwarts of PTQs in that area. Braun Duin came out on top, was absolutely thrilled about it, and has been playing Junk Reanimator pretty much ever since.